ロクサヌ。
ご主人様。
So we have finally made it to level number 2 in the Labyrinth of Harem and Labyrinth of Another World, and I'm starting to really feel like the Labyrinth is like the coinciding or like the backseat driver star to the anime. And you might be like, well, yeah, dog, come on now. Like, it's in the name, bro. Harem and Labyrinth of Another World. And it's just starting to become more evident, and I am actually extremely excited for the Labyrinth to kind of show face a little bit more. And I know that sounds weird because the Labyrinth doesn't really have a face, but it does have kind of like a vindictive and an interesting personality. And now that we have level 2, now that we're on level 2 of the Labyrinth, we're starting to see more of it. So level 1 was basically all of just like the woodlands. I don't know, like it was just a bunch of tree monsters. And now that we are in level 2, we're starting to see bug monsters as well. So I definitely feel like the Labyrinth is going to become more of a star, and we're going to be able to see more challenges. Very similar to like another anime, if we think about like Danmachi, right? Like the kind of one of the stars of Danmachi is the dungeon. Well, and this was kind of like the Labyrinth, and we're starting to see more of the intricacies within the Labyrinth as well. Like when he was trying to when Michio specifically was trying to travel back to the boss room, instead of the boss room, he traveled outside. And of course, you know, like Roxanne knows kind of like the inner workings. She's been part of a party before. But for Michio, like this is all of his first time. Even though he's pretty powerful and everything, like only him knows that like this is his first time with everything. So he's really like doing a lot of trial and error. And I just kind of really love being able to see him kind of like stumble and find things out. The same thing happens with when he finally did go back into the dungeon this episode. He was able to discover a leaf. The leaf gave him the herbalist ability, or the herbalist job class. When he enabled that herbalist job class, he was able to turn the leaf into like little beads. And the little beads were like little antidote balls. And those are in case he gets poisoned in the future with some kind of like monster. That also led him to go and do another thing, which he hadn't done yet, which was go buy paralysis balls and go buy like unfreezing balls and all kinds of other things. Basically, go prepare for every situation that he can now encounter, especially because he's at level 2. Now he's going to get to level 3, level 4, etc. Now, here's where I have to feign ignorance, or I shouldn't say feign ignorance. I should say here's where I was ignorant a little bit. And this might just be because of translation. This might just be because of sub work or something like that. But originally when Roxanne was kind of like running us through, here's how the dungeon works. And we kind of like were able to kind of grasp, okay, the dungeon doesn't go down, it goes up. And kind of like how that works, right? And how, you know, to defeat I keep saying dungeon. To defeat the Labyrinth, you need to defeat the boss of the last level of the Labyrinth. Couple of things. We don't really know what the last level is. We don't know if this Labyrinth has, 10 levels, 12 levels, 50 levels. We don't really know that yet. And I'm sure it's going to become apparent, or it's going to surface on how somebody can discover that. Maybe it's an ability or something to where they can like read a map or something. But we don't really know how many levels there are. So where my ignorance comes in is Michio defeated the level 1 boss monster, which was like a big tree. Instead of a little tree, is a big tree. So he defeated level 1 boss monster, okay? And I was like, all right, cool. They got through it and everything. Now, obviously, I should have known this, especially when Roxanne was explaining, like, oh, if you're a party, you can't go multiple parties into the boss room at one time. You have to take turns. There's a waiting room, stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, all par for course. If you're familiar with, like, sword art, like, you know that, right? Like, it's, like, only one party at a time kind of thing. Like, you can't really do it all at the same time, blah, 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 blah. I guess not similar to sword, but you know what I mean. Like, I was thinking in that mindset of, oh, they defeated the boss, that's it. Now you go to level 2 to defeat the boss. Doesn't matter who does it. Not the case. Michio and Roxanne gave it another go. They came back. The boss monster respawned. They did the boss again. They got another boss drop. So I was like, oh, I guess that's not how I was imagining it to work. I was imagining to take on the Labyrinth. You take on the floor, and if the boss monster is defeated, you just kind of move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. But really, it's every party has to take on the boss monster. But if there's a party that makes it all the way up to level whatever the last level is, then the labyrinth will just like go away. And there's so many questions I have about that too, if that's even correct. I don't actually know yet. And I don't feel like they really covered that. So that's kind of where a lot of my confusion comes from still, is like just around like the labyrinth, how it works, you know. What if someone defeats the last boss monster and the labyrinth disappears? Does that mean like everybody else was fighting? Like there's so many questions I have, right? Also, you know, Michio is able to use his teleportation into the labyrinth. If they, let's say if they make it to the boss room of level 99 or whatever, can they just teleport back there? Does he have to start from level, like, there's so many questions I have, and I'm sure it'll be answered kind of, again, like I said, as the anime goes on. The other part of the episode, outside of just dungeon stuff, was around the bandit looking at the looking at the trader mansion. I don't want to say training. The bandit looking at the trader mansion. Apparently, one of the slaves that had been sold, that Michio sold to the trader, the one of the bandits who the town, basically, like the town that the bandit was in, he's like, you know, he was like he was a traitor to the town. He sold him as a slave, and that slave is now being sold. But there's bandits on the lookout there, so bandits are gonna attack the trader stuff. So him and Roxanne go to warn the main trader guy, and you know, he's all playing cool about it. Long story short, Roxanne's like super worried. So because of that, Michio's like, okay, I'm gonna take Roxanne's side here, and I'm going to offer my services up. And he offered him up, and he became a bodyguard. So as we lead into the next episode, we're gonna see him kind of defeat bandits again. Maybe, you know, it seems like that's gonna be like what ends up being the case. So really good episode overall. Can't wait to see more. This episode, I definitely will say, it was one of those episodes that didn't need to be uncensored because nothing happened. No pokey stuff happened this episode, so there was really no need for this episode to be uncensored at all. So no matter what version you're watching, you're not missing out on anything in this episode. So let's put a grade on it. Let's call this episode 7 out of 10. Nothing too exciting, but good informational episode overall. All right, my friends, I'm gonna see you guys next week for more Harem and Labyrinth of Another World. Peace.